Welcome to WMTV's Flat Hat Insider Election Edition. I'm Lauren Stevenson. What a difference a week makes. Last week, Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney was considered unlikely to win the election by the New York Times' Nate Silver and many others in the media. His 47% comments trailing in swing state polls and other instances of negative press coverage made analysts think his campaign was in jeopardy. As Republican strategist Ed Rollins told Fox News, Romney could have lost his chance of winning if he lost the first debate. But then Wednesday happened. Yes, debate night, the first presidential debate, and Romney came out strong, and many believe he won the debate hands down. On the other hand, President Obama remained more reserved than usual and did not seem aggressive. He walked off stage after the debate looking disappointed. Some Democratic strategists say the only reason Romney won was because President Obama handed him the debate and basically underperformed. Is that really the case? Here to discuss that and much more, Chairman of William & Mary's College Republicans, Tyler Johnson, and President of William & Mary's Young Democrats, Zach Woodward. Welcome to the two of you. Thanks so much for joining us. Tyler, it was a great week for Mitt Romney. How do you feel about his debate performance?
Yeah, I really enjoyed his debate performance. I thought he did a very good job contrasting his policies with that of the last 4 years. I really think that the positives from the debate came from him being able to accurately and concisely describe his economic policy to get Americans back to work.
And what's your take on President Obama's performance, and some people saying that President Obama basically handed Governor Romney the debate because he underperformed? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I don't think President Obama performed as poorly as everyone's been saying. I thought he did a very great job when speaking about entitlements. I just think that it's hard for President Obama to stand there and defend his record from the last 4 years when Governor Romney is right there to contrast his views with that of the president.
And we'll talk more about the specific issues in a few moments, but I got to get Zach's take on President Obama's performance. A lot of people right after the debate were very disappointed in his performance. What's your take on it?
I'm one of those disappointed people. I did not think it was a strong debate performance. I think that Governor Romney made a lot of points that were just flat out inaccurate and mischaracterized the president's achievements and policies. And I think that had he called Governor Romney out on those specific inaccuracies, his debate performance would have been a whole lot better.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, do you think it has to blame? Do you think his aides are to blame? Because they were concerned that if he was too aggressive, he would kind of dissatisfy some independent voters who were still undecided. Some people are saying that this was one of the worst performances by an incumbent president in modern times. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think two things. In response to the AIDS thing, I think the AIDS could be one factor into his weak debate performance. It could have also just been he's been out of practice or his nerves got the best of him. We don't know. We weren't there behind the debate prep. But in terms of whether it was the worst performance by an incumbent president, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. It may do a good job as a headline, but if you look back at 1984 with the first debate between Mondale and Reagan, Reagan got very tripped up over Medicare and certain calls that Mondale made towards him, and the same thing in 2004 between Kerry and Bush. Kerry appeared the victor in that race, and as we know, he didn't win the race.
Now, President Obama, a lot of people, even body language experts, were saying when he came out, and first of all, we don't know how much you should trust body language experts, but when he came out on stage and throughout his performance, they said he looked like he was kind of disinterested in the whole thing. How do you respond to that, and do you think this first debate performance will haunt President Obama for the rest of his campaign?
I think the disinterest that may have come off his body language may have just been him, like we said, trying not to appear aloof or trying to be what his aides thought he should be. And again, we don't know, and we don't know how much we can trust body language. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
I mean, do you think it will haunt the rest of his campaign?
Well, I don't think it necessarily will. I mean, you saw at the end of this past week with the new jobs report, the headlines were mixed week for President Obama rather than terrible week for the president. So I think that since we're already seeing some good news and that the week as a whole was being judged as mixed, this one debate won't haunt the entire race. And like I said before, the first debate back in 2004 didn't haunt the rest of the race for Bush.
Okay, and Tyler, your thoughts? Do you think President Obama will come back swinging a little more? How do you think Governor Romney will prepare for that?
Well, I don't think President Obama should any means be counted out. He's a very skilled debater. He's a gifted orator. And I think that in the following two debates, he'll really put his ideas forward and take it to Governor Romney. But I fully expect Governor Romney to stand strong. I think he truly believes in the difference between his points and that of the president. I think he will continue to highlight those differences to his advantage.
Obviously, Rob Portman is a great debate coach. He really prepared Governor Romney. He just came out looking a lot stronger. Were you surprised by how much stronger he looked? Some people say he looked like a completely different candidate when he came out on stage.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did very well. I think he was confident. I think he believed in what he was saying. And I think that the chance for him to contrast his policies right there to the American people between, you know, those of his and those of the president really just like filled him with confidence. And I think that he really enjoyed making that contrast evident to 70 million people or however many people watch the debate.
Okay. Now, the Washington Post's Glenn Kessler fact-checked the candidates' statements during the debate on their tax plans, and he says that the Obama campaign, quote, assumes the worst about Romney's plan, end quote. So he's basically saying that the Obama campaign is kind of exaggerating whatever outcome Mitt Romney's tax plan would have on the American people. How do you respond to that? And then I want to also hand that question to Tyler as well.
Well, I think two things. One, we haven't gotten a lot of specifics about the Romney tax plan from Romney, so we sort of do have to make some assumptions. And from what we're seeing with the Romney plan and Paul Ryan's budget, which Romney has endorsed in the past, we do need to assume that there are a lot of hard decisions that are going to come down for the middle class. And the other thing is that it's not just the Obama campaign. The Brookings Institute, which is nonpartisan and which Governor Romney has praised in the past, has itself said that the Romney tax plan will raise thousands of dollars on middle-class families in taxes.
Tyler, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think the Brookings Institute is a left-leaning think tank, so I think that, you know, Heritage probably has a very different set of views on that issue. But I think that, you know, I would expect Governor Romney to make the worst of Obama's tax plan. I think that's just politics. But I think that, you know, in regard to the lack of specifics, I think Governor Romney was very clear during the debate where he said, you know, he plans to make this revenue neutral by, number one, growing the economy, and by, number two, putting a cap on deductions that somebody can make. And, you know, he's floated the numbers of $17,000, $25,000, $50,000. He said that he's going to work with Congress to make a bipartisan solution to make this revenue neutral. And I think that, you know, if the average deductions for a middle-class family is $13,000, then I think that regardless of what this number is, it's going to mean that the taxes, you know, are going to be lowered for the middle class and raised for higher income individuals. And I think that's, you know, what the president's been asking for. And I think that's what Romney has pretty clearly spelled out in his tax policy.
Okay, and just to address that issue for our viewers, revenue neutral essentially means, when talking about Mitt Romney's plan, that he would cut the tax loopholes, get rid of them. The other thing, though, is the Tax Policy Center, which is independent, not affiliated, says that the numbers in Romney's current plan don't add up to revenue neutral because there haven't been many specifics about it. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah.
Just that there's not enough information yet, I guess.
Yeah, well, the Tax Policy Center came out and said that there would be $5 trillion added to the deficit over the next 10 years. And they based that report off of Romney saying he wants to lower tax rates on individuals by 20%, that he wants to eliminate the alternative minimum tax, and that he wants to get rid of the estate tax. And they did not factor into that account what he came out later afterwards and said about the deduction cap. And, you know, that combined with the growing economy is what's going to make up the gap and make it revenue neutral. And because he hasn't set a specific number, because, you know, he's not the president, he hasn't worked with Congress, he hasn't come up with a specific proposal that could pass both the House and the Senate, you know, it's impossible to have a fair and unbiased evaluation of the governor's tax plan because they haven't hashed out the specifics because they don't know what can actually pass, what can go into effect.
Okay, now moving on to education, to the both of you that did come up in the debate last week. President Obama was defensive of his attempts at making college more accessible financially, and he talked about plans to improve community colleges, add more math and science teachers. Zach, could you tell us what specifically President Obama has done for education. Obviously, a topic that affects all of us here at the College of William & Mary and practically every person our age in the country.
Well, one thing that's just really great is that he's doubled funding for Pell Grants since he came into office. That makes college more affordable and more accessible for many different students from a wide variety of backgrounds. So that's one thing that he does. Another thing that he has done is capped the amount that a lender can charge a student after they graduate in terms of repaying those student loans, so that a student can borrow money without having to worry about being drowned in debt after they graduate. So those are just two things that he's done to make college more affordable and accessible to a wider variety of economic backgrounds.
Now, Tyler, Governor Romney spoke, quite frankly, the most about education that I've heard from him in a while at the debate. And he did have some specifics. He said that he's pledged not to cut funding for education or grants, but he did endorse his vice presidential running mate Paul Ryan's plan that is reported to cut at least $100 million in Pell Grants. How do you respond to that? How would you reconcile those two stances?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he, hasn't completely made up his mind about what he wants to do with education, and probably he won't until he's about to enter the White House. But I think the real issue when it comes to education is that, yes, President Obama has doubled funding for Pell Grants, but it's still very hard to pay off those Pell Grants, to pay off your student debt if you don't have a job when you graduate. And I think that that's what Romney's point is, that he wants to get people under 30 working. He wants to get students working to have a summer job so that once they get out of college, they can pay down that student debt, because even if the interest rate is low, if you're not making any money, then you're still not going to be able to pay off your student debt.
Right, now let's move on to the big news of the week. Besides the debate, the jobs numbers report from September came out this past Friday, and the unemployment rate is now down to 7.8%. It was at 8.1%. It's the first time it's fallen below 8% since President Obama took office. But some people, including former GE CEO Jack Welch, have come out, tweeted about it, and said that they think the books were cooked, basically that the numbers were kind of messed with. Zach, what's your response to that?
We haven't seen any credible evidence that these, books were cooked, so to say. And so I think to just give this any sort of credit as an actual or legitimate concern is just beyond ridiculous, and we should focus on the numbers that we actually have and have a serious discussion on our economy and the state of jobs.
So what does 7.8% unemployment, that fall from 8.1, what does it mean to you? What does it say about President Obama?
It means to me that President Obama's job creation strategy since he got into office is working. We've seen more private sector jobs created than the entire 8 years of the Bush administration. When we came in, jobs were being lost at a ridiculously high rate, and now the turnaround has actually gotten to such an extent that we've dropped below the 8% unemployment rate, which is just good news for all of America, especially the middle class.
But some people are bringing up the fact that some of this unemployment rate drop has to do with people taking on part-time jobs, but these are people who want to have full-time jobs. Other people have just kind of taken themselves out of the job search.
Yep.
Quickly, how do you respond to that?
That's definitely an aspect to it, and so we need to make sure that we are focusing on creating good, full-time private sector jobs, which is what the focus that the president has had for the longest time. But the number we have is 7.8%. Clearly, there is an improvement in the market, and people are being put back to work.
Tyler, your response. Governor Romney was a businessman and does talk about his success in business. How do you look at this unemployment rate?
Well, I think, it's too little too late. 7.8% is still a terrible unemployment rate. When Barack Obama was running for president the first time around, he pledged that it would be 4.5% this time, and it's not even close to there. And even with it dropping below 8%, President Obama still has more months as one president in one term of unemployment rate over 8% than every other president combined since they started tracking that in 1948. So I think that really just speaks to how terrible the economy is right now. And I think that, the difference between 8.1% and 7.8% isn't really that significant when you look in the broader context of, there's still tens of millions of Americans who are underemployed or unemployed. And I think that that's the real issue.
Real quickly, last question. This coming Thursday, the one and only vice presidential debate. Vice President Joe Biden. Congressman and also Vice Presidential nominee Paul Ryan will be debating. First of all, Zach, what should we look for in Joe Biden's performance?
Well, I think Joe Biden is a strong debater. He always has been. He's been around for decades. And I think that a lot of the sort of, I don't know quite what the word is, but absentness that we saw from the president back in this past debate will not be the case when Vice President Biden goes up to debate Paul Ryan. And we're going to see him calling out the Romney-Ryan budget and many of the other drastic measures that the Romney-Ryan ticket planned to make once elected to the White House.
And Tyler, what should we expect from Paul Ryan?
Well, I think Paul Ryan has a gift for being sharp and concise and being able to explain complicated economic theories to the average American. And I think you'll see a lot of that in this debate. I think that Biden had a questionable performance against Sarah Palin. I think that Paul Ryan's considerably more formidable.
Great. Thank you to the two of you. Zach Woodward, President of the Young Democrats, Tyler Johnson, Chairman of the College Republicans. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. And now to politics. Here at home, Flat Hat Online editor Zach Hardy joins us with the latest Virginia political news. Welcome, Zach.
Hi, Lauren.
Thanks for coming on. So tell me, what's going on in the race between George Allen and Tim Kaine?
Well, last week, there wasn't really anything super new because obviously the presidential debate kind of dwarfed the other political news that was going on. So Kaine and Allen are really just kind of following up their campaigns until Election Day. They're visiting all over the state. I saw a report that said Kaine is going to places like Southwest Virginia, places that are traditionally very Republican, very conservative, and George Allen visiting places like Hampton Roads and Virginia Beach and stuff, places that are traditionally more liberal-leaning. As far as their messages are going, they're really consistently echoing lots of the sentiments of the national conventions. Kaine is arguing he wants to raise taxes on families that are earning $500,000 or more, whatever. He really is aiming to aggressively invest in education and infrastructure. So he's obviously, wanting a more involved role of the state government. Allen, he's a proponent of the flat tax. He wants to add a balanced budget amendment to the Virginia Constitution, some of the more traditionally conservative views. So, and he's also, I mentioned this last time, but he is also a very strong proponent of halting the defense spending cuts or whatever that are set to go in place at the end of the year. So he's aggressively, campaigning in military areas and stuff to encourage things like that.
And I also hear that there's new numbers that have been released on the campaign finances for both of those campaigns? Yeah, so according to the Washington Post article that I saw in another source, Kaine has outraised George Allen by $1 million, but Kaine has also been spending a lot more money. He recently, the Kaine campaign announced that he is spending he's spending $3 million on more airtime, and airtime that's in more minority-based areas and minority Latin television and different things like that to really target the demographic. I saw an old poll that he is healthily leading against non-white voters or whatever, so he's really appealing to his base right there. And then, like I said, not too much new this week or whatever, but the debate is going to be on Monday night between the two of them, so we'll have to see how that turns out. And then you guys didn't mention this earlier, but Mitt Romney is also, he is going to be visiting Newport News Monday as well. So yes, he'll be at the Victory Landing
Park, yes.
So if you want to get out there and possibly see Mitt Romney, Victory Landing Park Monday night around 5 p.m. in Newport News. Thanks so much, Zach, for joining us, and thank you for joining us here on the Flat Hat Insider. That's all the time we have for today. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We'll be back in 2 weeks after fall break with your latest political news, including the recap on the vice presidential debate between Joe Biden and Paul Ryan. Until next time, thanks for joining us and follow us online.